Coach, I never thought about doing this, but our guest today talked about having a family constitution. And I thought the concept was so powerful, and I'm excited to dive in more about that.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I really enjoyed was some of the questions he shared in being a more effective interviewer. In fact, the one that jumped out to me is asking in an interview, what are you grateful for in your life?
Let's get into it.
This is the Limitless Leadership Lounge, where Coach and John learn along with you from some of the world's most decorated leaders. Recently promoted, let's sharpen the saw together.
Well, we're really looking forward on the Limitless Leadership Lounge to invite a local leader, Brad Dufrane. Brad and I have become pretty good friends. I've had the honor to speak at a couple of his different events at New York Life. Brad Dufrane serves as the managing partner of the New York Life's Finger Lakes office, where he leads a team of 110 financial professionals and oversees more than 2.1 billion in assets. Brad holds 5 professional designations from the American College and has spent over 30 years coaching, mentoring, and developing leaders in the financial services industry. And I might add, he's a big avid basketball, and he's coached some basketball in his day as well. He is a past president of the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Brad married his high school sweetheart, Wendy, and together they built a life centered on family, raising 3 children and celebrating the joy of 6 grandchildren. Beyond business, Brad is the author of a children's book written in memory of his late father. He is also an avid Syracuse and Arizona basketball fan. Brad is a finisher of multiple marathons and Spartan races. We might dig into that a little bit. In 2016, Brad was inducted in his high school's Sports Hall of Fame as a player and coach. Without further ado, Brad Dufrane, welcome to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Well, thank you, Coach. Really appreciate that intro. Super excited to be here with you and John. I listen to the podcast as I share it with our leaders and our emerging leaders. So for me to be part of this conversation, I'm extremely grateful. But after that intro, if we could end now and for me to say anything to mess it up, that would be, but no, thank you. That was a very kind intro and super grateful to be here.
It's our pleasure. We're looking forward to it. So my first question, we're going to dive right in, is that you've been able to move up the ranks in the corporate world. And as a young and emerging leader, that's our focus group. What advice would you give a young leader that takes over a first leadership position, but then wants to move up into a higher level of leadership?
It's a great question. And I often, when I speak to young leaders, I say this, I tell them that I wish on day one of leadership training, and I'm going back 1997, I started in 95, went through some leadership in 1997, 98, so a very long time ago. I wish somebody in my first leadership position sat me down and had me understand the immense value around being humble, around being grateful, and the true understanding meaning of servant leadership. Servant leadership is talked about a lot nowadays, and people, I think there's just a lot more around servitude nowadays than whatever used to be. But when I really started to intentionally bring those things into my leadership journey and understanding that you're really not going to get anywhere without genuinely being humble and grateful and serving others, it made all the difference in the world for me. And if I could give any advice to young emerging leaders, it is just that: find a way. And for a lot of us, like, it's not natural. I work with a couple of coaches. I work with a positive psychology coach who for years now has helped me with understanding the value of gratitude and doing certain activities to make you more grateful, right? Because not everybody's geared to be grateful. A lot of people think, oh, that person's just happy and go lucky and grateful, and this person's not. And so I think there's just a lot of intention around those 3 things. So it's not only those 3 things, but it's providing intention around those 3 things.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of these different characteristics of a great leader. And what I noticed is that you didn't mention anything specific to finances or any of the work that you do. You manage, Coach mentioned, we're $2 billion in assets, right? So there's a lot of money under your care and a lot of people counting on your expertise. But when you talk about leadership, you're talking about some of these other, many people would say, soft skills. And this is interesting too, Brad. I was going to ask you about basketball coaching and all of the other things that you've done between the physical accomplishments that you've had and your leadership in your career. How transferable is leadership between something maybe in your professional career to in your personal life with your children to coaching and everything in between?
I love that because I've got Wendy and I have three amazing children who are all leaders in their own way and within their careers and their families. And I think it is definitely transferable, right? I think whether it's at home or in the business world, if you're in a position of leadership, people are going to emulate what you're doing and how you're doing it. I had a leader often tell me that culture is contagious. You want yours spreading, right? Do you want that culture in the office of leadership and gratitude and those types of things spreading, John? I think that it's definitely a teachable skill. You have to have somebody that's open-minded, willing to, and maybe they're not open-minded in the beginning. I'll be very transparent. I've been doing this a long time, and years ago I might not have admitted this, but the older you get, the more honest I think you become, and the more humble you become. For the first couple of years of my leadership journey, I had a manager that told me, Brad, you gotta be a better listener. And instead of taking courses on listening, instead of doing work on my listening, I was like, what the heck is this guy talking about? I'm a great listener. Like, I'm going to listen better. And you don't just listen better, right? And I found out that ultimately, it really wasn't even listening. It was questions. Like, you got to ask the right questions. The quality of our life will depend on the quality of the questions that we ask of others, right? And if you ask a great question, then you have no choice but to sit there and listen to a great response. I think that definitely very teachable, learnable skill set that can transcend generations there.
That's a great point. Brad, because not only become friends, but I follow you a lot on LinkedIn, and you are always bringing on new team members. So, what advice would you give in bringing the famous Jim Collins line, bringing the right people onto the bus and getting them in the right seats? Because that is so essential. We had some real characteristics we looked at when we were picking our basketball team, and we cut some players that were better players, but they just didn't fit the other characteristics that we were looking for. So, what advice would you give a young leader to bring the right people onto the bus?
Yeah, I love that book. And I think it's a great concept. I think number one, as a leader, it's crazy to say, but you got to know what bus you're driving, right? So you got to know where you're going. Internally, as a leader, you've got to know your why. What is that guiding principle? What is your why? And then once you discover your why, then allow your decisions around hiring, around your decisions of bringing people onto that bus, having them know their roles, finding roles for them. So in our organization, we seek out very talented, passionate individuals. I think being open-minded around what a leadership journey would look like. And also, is there a good pairing of the leader and the emerging leader? So we have a saying that we really live by, both a lot of my leaders personally and professionally, and that's love. Not love, the euphoric feeling, right? But love as in leaving others valuable experiences, right? When we're looking at leaders and emerging leaders, is do they have the differential skill set that differentiates them, that's going to allow them to leave others valuable experiences? And that's some of what we're looking for when we're looking for young leaders.
Tell us a time when you've brought in someone that's not doing well. Tell us a story of, you don't have to bring the person's particular name in, but you just, how do you handle that? Because sometimes I know I coached for 30 years as a head coach, and I made some wrong decisions on bringing some people that should have been on that bus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's challenging from a standpoint that, especially if you have somebody that wants to succeed, they want to do really well, and maybe they're hired to the wrong position, or that wasn't the right position at all for them. And I think for us is digging in a little bit deeper to find out, like, what do they want to do? What is their skill set? What do they bring to the table? Is there a way that we can move them around to a different opportunity, find if they are positive and if they're energetic, right? Because that's another part of kind of our baseline, is we're looking for people that are extremely positive, energetic. I tell people all the time, you should not meet somebody more positive than you throughout the day. That's just the zero-sum game. If you can't bring that to the table, then it might not be a spot. So if somebody shares all those characteristics and they're just maybe in the wrong position, that's the easier fix, is you test their skill set out a little bit, you find an opportunity elsewhere. I think the more challenging situations I've had occur is you have somebody that presents himself one way throughout an interview process, right? And I'm the hardest worker, right? And I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. and you hire the person, and then you realize that just maybe they're not what they held themselves out to be. And what's really strange is that in our industry and at our office, we're very fortunate to have an unbelievable selection process. In this selection process, if you follow it like to a T, all the steps, you're not going to be assured that you're going to hire somebody very successful, but it's going to be a pretty high likelihood of matchability that this person's going to be successful. But what happens throughout an interview process is, especially our younger or emerging leaders, they fall in love with a candidate, right? And this candidate's going to be the rock star. They're going to be the best thing ever. We got to get them on board. Let's go. Come on, let's get it done, right? And what I try and teach the young leaders is fall in love with your process. The people are going to come and go throughout the process, but if you fall in love with the fact that we give them an interview process, there's a two-step interview process, right? We have a VIP meeting where they can bring in a very important person in their world to the office and see the organization, whether that's a parent, a sibling, a boyfriend, girlfriend, your husband or wife. And then we take them through an onboarding phase, a test phase. If you really love the process, then the right candidates are going to filter themselves out. Where we get in trouble is when we fall in love too quick with a person, which is hard for me because I like everybody. So it's very challenging. Yeah.
I love that. Fall in love with the process. Also like your LOVE acronym too, that you shared earlier. Now, would there be specific interview questions that you would recommend the young and emerging leaders use? And how like when somebody on your team is helping to bring somebody on a team and maybe they're doing an interview, how many of those questions that they ask are directed by you for them to ask, and how much flexibility and personal responsibility do they have over that process?
Yeah, there's really three questions that I would love to know. So if I was involved in an interview process and somebody says, "Hey, I've got this really great candidate, would you meet with them?" If they haven't asked the questions, I ask the questions. Typically, they'll have the answers for me because they know. But one of them is, "What are you most grateful for?" And instinctively, people in a job interview, probably 90% of the time, they'll say, "For work, you mean, or professionally?" And I'm just like, in life, what are you most grateful for? And what's your best memory growing up? I think that, them having a candidate be able to tell you the best memory they had, whether that was surrounding family, a sport journey, or whatever they could do, they could. And then lastly, if you could design the perfect role for you, what are the characteristics that role would have to have, right? And so those three questions are important. And then what I really like to do is when I'm all done having a conversation with somebody, I'm just getting to know them. The one question that kind of really opens up and gives them a chance to talk about something that they've been wanting to filter in, but they haven't filtered in yet, is I'll say, "Hey, John, let me ask you this. When you thought about our conversation today and you thought about the interview questions, that sort of thing, I've got a question. Like, what is maybe one question or one topic that you thought I was going to ask you that we haven't chatted about today?" And then you might say, "Oh, it was definitely my time at Syracuse. I know you have a passion for Syracuse. I went to Syracuse," and boom, now we have an immediate instant connection there. So it just gives a candidate, I think, time to really reflect on something they've been wanting to share and maybe haven't had a chance to share it yet.
Those are some great points. I got to flip the script a little bit because you've run in a bunch of marathons and Spartan races, and I am someone that I think you should challenge yourself and do some things hard. What have you learned from those experiences?
I'll tell you, for me, for a lifelong athlete, coached and played basketball, baseball, and soccer, running was not like a natural given deal, right? Running long distances was never a thing, right? My wife, who was an athlete younger, but as she got older, never really participated in sports or that sort of thing, she came home one day and I can't remember what year, but she walks in the door from work. She was a registered nurse. She's been retired now for a few years. But at the time she goes, "I'm going to run a marathon." And I'm like, we don't even do 5Ks. What are you talking about? You're going to run a marathon, right? But the type of relationship we have is the fact that, hey, like, I'm going to support her. She's always supported me. So whatever it takes. So her training for her first marathon, like me riding my bike beside her or having the water ready for her, right? Like, I just saw what it took for her to get it done. And two things happened, right? This incredible, emotional, I'm a very emotional person, right? So this incredible emotion that like, wow, she was able to accomplish this. I was right here. I think I could do this. right? And that's what really inspired me, was the kind of the outside motivation. And then I had a cousin whose son had just been diagnosed with cancer, was fighting a cancer battle, and very early on in the process, and he's, geez, like 12 years cancer free now, and it's amazing. But at the time, he was going through a very difficult battle. And in my mind, I said, I'm going to run this marathon, and then I'm going to send Nick my finisher medal. And so for me, like, every run that I did, as painful or as difficult what it was, like, I had an outside driving force helping me do that. Because quite honestly, like, if it was just me and I hadn't told my wife I was going to do that or anything, I don't know if I would have ever finished it. And then sure enough, I did. I sent him a card, and my cousin's great. He called me back. He goes, Brad, he goes, I still have my t-shirts from cross country in middle school from stuff that I finished. And like, you sent my son a finisher medal for your first marathon. Like, this is mind blowing. And I was just grateful to be able to do that and brighten his day for a day. But like, for me, Coach, I think that there had to be some external motivation there. And my wife and I do that a lot for one another, whether it's the marathons, half marathons, or Spartans that we've done. And then just, I've had a motto that I've tried to help our kids and our family live by. And it's, as much as you can, get your fitness right, get your mind right, and in my business, get your finances right. Those three things, if you can really focus on those three things, a lot of it will take care of itself.
And what is a Spartan race?
So a Spartan race is in essence anywhere from a 5K to a half marathon that has several military style obstacles that you compete as you're running the event. Typically, they're on the side of a mountain or in a stadium that's got a lot of elevation. And it's just like higher level of physical. Like, the Spartan race that we did in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, was the most grueling physical activity we'd ever done. More difficult than any marathons or anything of that nature.
Wow.
What made it so difficult?
The terrain, the fact that you're basically on this side of a ski resort, this mountain, and you're going up and down, and you're doing these military obstacles that for me, that I'm not good at. It's just very challenging, and you prepare for it. You know what you're in for, but it was just very challenging. But I think it also, you have that instant reward, even though you feel horrible at the end of it. It's just that you've done it, you've accomplished it, and you feel great about it.
Yeah. And how does taking care of yourself physically, because a lot of leaders listening to this might be thinking, okay, that's two different parts of Brad. He's a great, very successful financially and in his professional career, but then he also runs on the side, does Spartan races on the side. But I think what a lot of leaders will have told us, and what I've learned too in my early entrepreneurial journey, is that there is a connection. So tell us, for you, what is that connection between being physically so in shape and challenging yourself to do hard things and also succeeding professionally?
Yeah, I can appreciate that. In disclaimer, I haven't done a marathon or half marathon in a couple of years. Okay. So that physically fit thing is a constant work in progress. But John, one of the things that I learned from a coach a long time ago is that you can live life by default. And I think the vast majority of us are in that position where we're just going through life, whether we're a leader, whether we're not, like, we're just going through life, and it's a life by default, and we check the boxes, and that's how we live. Or you can live a life by design. And by living a life by design, you can create a part of you that exists in that space of taking care of yourself, right? And being as physically fit as you can be, that really complements you being a great leader, that complements you being a tremendous husband and father. And if you do it the right way and you plan the activities and you schedule those things in your schedule, then I think that living a life by design is really incredibly rewarding. So some of the leaders I work with now, they take it to the next level, and they say it's living a life, or creating a life that you don't have to retire from, that you just kind of love doing what you're doing. And it's this great harmony that exists between your personal life and your professional life that blend together. And there's sacrifices, right? And it's not always easy. Early on as a leader, there was far too many times where my default was just to go to the gym and coach basketball, and then go to the meeting, and then go to the conference. And as a result, you don't spend enough time with your family. And now there's very intentional things that Wendy and I do for our family that we've implemented as our part of our family constitution, if you will, around how we want to see the next generations unfold.
Well said. Brad, I got to bring up, I'm curious because you dedicated a children's book, and I'd like if we have time to delve into that, but I got a question first. It seems like your dad was a real powerful figure in your life. What did you learn from your dad?
Yeah. My dad and my mother, for that matter, biggest champions that you can possibly imagine for their children, right? Every sports event, not only at every sport event, but like every practice that he could make, right? She could make. I think the biggest lesson, the biggest value, and there's many and many, right? And I've thought about this many times as I think about him and his impact on me and impact on a lot of people. But I think it was his belief in me no matter what I did. So that I could have came home and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to be an astronaut," and he'd be like, "Hey, that's awesome. You're going to be the best astronaut. Let's go. What do we got to do?" So for my dad, it was really teaching me to believe in my children, believe in my family. He was the best grandfather, and I thank God that my children got to experience him as a grandfather for as many years as they did, because there wasn't he would drive 3 hours to watch one way to watch my daughter play in a high school basketball game.
Wow.
It's incredible. And my mother the same way. I remember getting off the school bus in sixth grade, and my mother's out with a hose, like hosing off the driveway because there was still about this time of year, still some ice on the driveway, and she wanted to clear it off because she knows I wanted to play basketball as soon as I got home. So to have parents like that, like I feel like I hit the parent lottery.
You had mentioned something earlier that I thought was powerful. You mentioned the term family constitution. Now, I don't know if you have one formally, but I know mission statements, whether personally or professionally, are so important. So, how would you advise a leader to come up with a mission statement, whether it be just for their family or for their organization?
Yeah, I do have a family. We do have a family constitution, which is neat. I can tell you about the book where we got that from and why we do it. But I think the mission statement, if you're looking at what your life is going to be guided by, right? If it's going to be guided by your family and in business, is creating that go between, right? So for me, my mission, my why is I passionately coach, train, and develop financial advisors and leaders, enabling them to hit their personal and their professional goals. Now, if I do that and I'm successful at that, then as a byproduct of that, like my family will be taken care of and what I want to do with my family. So then it's basically allowing all the decisions after that to be guided by that mission statement or family constitution, if you will. But there's a great book. I think I shared this with Coach. Can't remember if I did or not, but it's called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And it's a book that a friend of mine, Garrett Gunderson, wrote. And basically, he talked about the Rockefeller wealth legacy that's lived on for generations and generations. And one of the things that they do to help perpetuate generational wealth is they have a family constitution. And what it simply is, what are some values that the family shares? What are some mission statements, if you will? What does a family believe in? And you give everybody a voice. And that's what's cool, is everybody gets a say in what that looks like and sounds like and that sort of thing. Yeah, I just think it's important to find that why and then let that why guide and direct you the way that you're going.
Would you be open to sharing a couple of those values that your family lives by?
I think, and I can tell you if we have time, I'll give you the story of how this started, is part of gratitude and part of giving. Is that every year, part of what is generated, part of what we make as income should be given back in a way that we see fit. So this started, I talked about being young and immature and that sort of thing. I was a couple years, maybe even a year into my career, and I had my manager on a Friday come to me and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "would you mind coming into the office tomorrow on a Saturday and helping me with something?" And this is like right before Christmas. Christmas is like on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And I'm sure at the time, like Wendy and I, we got a couple small kids, and we're I got something going on. I'm thinking like, what's this? Like, I got to come into the office on a Saturday. Oh God, what are we doing? But I do, because he's the type of guy that I like. If he asked me to run through the brick wall, I would have ran through the brick wall, right? So I just did what he asked me to do. I get to the office on Saturday, and he backs up to this Jeep Cherokee to the office door, and he says, "Come on over here." And he opens up this closet door in the office, and he had probably 40 or 50 wrapped presents that had the name of where they were going and like a little yellow sticky of where we were meeting these people. And, slowly I started to realize that he basically every year, it was in Messina, New York, went to the Messina nurse, the school nurse, and said, "Hey, who are 10 families that I can buy for?" And it wasn't a buy for, look at me, I'm Santa Claus, I'm coming in with all these presents. It was, okay, we're going to meet Jim and Mary Smith at the Dunkin' Donuts and give them their 10 presents, so then they can go deliver them to their children and be the heroes and be the Santa Clauses, if you will. And I was just blown away that, first of all, like I had, oh my God, like I'm frustrated. I was asked to go in, and then to go through that experience and live through that experience. And then for literally every single year now for 30 years, Wendy and I have done that, and our children do the same exact thing, and not even with us asking them to. I remember the first time our son and daughter-in-law called us up, they sent pictures. They're in Walmart. They had two shopping carts full of toys, and they said, "Going to XYZ school." And it was just incredible. And here's the really crazy thing is, this is the type of leader, right? This man was amazing. Like in that moment, like I obviously shared something very impactful with him and thought that like him and I were tied, and we were tied to that moment, but I felt very special. Years later, probably this happened in the 90s, and I was asked to give his eulogy in maybe 2021 or 2022. And I spoke about that moment, and I spoke about that story and how impactful it was. And afterwards at the family gathering, I had probably 7 or 8 people come up to me and say, "He did the same thing for me." Wow. And we do the same thing. So it's like now that impact has just speared just immense giving. So part of our family constitution is definitely giving. Part of it is, as our children's children and grandchildren grow up, hey, if we want to share with them like books that have been impactful to us, right? What are some books? So there's a list of books that are part of this document that they can look at and read if they want to. And it's nothing, oh, hey, here's some homework for the day, get this done. But we have one family retreat, and we just sit down as part of that week for one moment to just kind of look at those things, discuss those things, what was meaningful, what's been meaningful, what do we want to see our family do moving forward, and that sort of thing.
Wow.
That's really cool. The power of paying it forward, right?
That's right.
Really good. Hey, Brad, going back, because I've been part of 2 books that I've written, but I think it's neat if everyone writes a book. But I'm curious, tell us a little bit about why you chose a children's book, and a little bit about the process that you would give somebody advice if they were going to write a book.
I chose the children's book for the simple reason that my father, like, he told our children this like little nursery rhyme, and it started off with just this one saying, "Hey, do froggies hop? Does the rooster crow?" And he'd add to it and add to it. So by the time we get to like our 4th or 5th grandchild in the mix, like he had this like whole little nursery rhyme that as he's bouncing them on their knee, he would say, and the kids would memorize it and they'd say it back. And it was just this very cute thing that we had never heard anywhere else. And after he passed away, I said to my wife, I said, it'd be great to memorialize that. And I think she might have been the first one to say, "Why don't you write a children's book?" And oddly enough, it wasn't as difficult as what I thought it would be. I put it together. I saw a lot of help like I do now. I seek the advice of others that have done it very successfully. And you get guided along the way.
We're really grateful for your time and insights. And I know John will probably have a question or 2 to wrap up as well. But I'm curious, it sounds like you're a reader yourself. If you were to help a young and emerging leader, give them, what would be 3 books you would recommend they read?
Atomic Habits by James Clear would be the first 3 books I would read over and over again. James Clear and Atomic Habits. And I've been reading business books and books for a very long time. And I don't know as it gets better than that. That's one that's reoccurring in our book club over and over again. We have a book club in the office where we read 4 books a year together, and we do a debrief on them. So yeah, I think James Clear, absolutely. 5 levels of leadership. If you're going to be a tremendous leader and you want to understand that power around those things. And then I think for an emerging leader, a new leader, The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod really gives somebody an idea of how important that first hour, 2 hours in the morning really are. And if you're going to be an executive level leader, how early you should be starting your day. What are those things that you should be doing? What type of meditation, workout? What are you doing for that first hour to really prepare yourself with intention to have an amazing day?
We know that sometimes, Brad, the first hour is tougher because you might be under the weather, we might be traveling, we might be having a circumstance that's not so perfect. And I know a lot of people love to put in that perfect morning routine, but sometimes it can get disrupted. And ironically, as we're recording this, Coach is sick and you are traveling, you're on the road. Talk about the importance of a leader playing hurt or playing even under non-ideal circumstances. Do you feel like that's what separates average leaders from some of the better ones?
I think that's definitely part of it, right? I think that in an organization, a followership, people are looking at you, right? And if you are easily swayed from a routine or you're easily swayed from your values or what you stand for, I think that sends a ripple effect to the entire organization, right? And yes, I'm on the road, Indianapolis, University of Arizona makes a Final Four. Wendy and I decided to come here as an insecure leader early in my journey. Like, I would have been fearful of doing something like this in a hotel room. Like, housekeeping could knock on the door, the air conditioner could kick out. Who knows what's going on, right? Car starts up outside. We're on the first floor. You can hear it, right? At the end of the day, as a leader, you're going to do the thing and you're going to make the absolute most of it. And by you just doing it, it's going to be 1,000% better than if you chose not to do it that day. If that means that you woke up and you weren't feeling well and you get to the gym for 30 minutes instead of whatever, or you didn't get a chance to meditate that day. I had a nutritionist that once told us, hey, listen, if you're going to fall off the wagon one day, don't let it turn into 2. Don't have 2 back-to-back days where you shouldn't be eating what you shouldn't be eating, right? And I think like that morning routine's the same way. Like, everybody's human. Everybody's going to have those moments or those times. But what it's going to be is, what are you going to do to come back from that?
Said. And Brad, we appreciate you taking the time out from what I know is a fun trip for you guys. And I got to ask too, are you working from the hotel room or are you taking some time away just with your wife?
So Friday through today, through Monday, has just been basketball and the Fan Fest, which includes music and just having a great time, making some new friends, seeing some of our old friends. And today, Monday, championship day, game doesn't start until 8, so I was able to get in a couple of meetings here, but just a healthy mix today where the last 3 or 4 days have been just about hanging out and being present at the Final Four, which is a tremendous experience.
And that's great for a leader to know too, that it is important to take that time away and to refresh and for whatever is important in your life, which I know, Brad, your family is super important. One final question that you ask as an interview question, you mentioned it before, and I thought to myself, this would be a great way to close our interview today. It's by asking you, Brad, what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for life. Within that, it's my family. It's this blessed career that I've been part of now for 31 years. So life, family, career, and relationships. I've been able to form some amazing relationships with people. Coach and I now for a few years, I look up to and cherish the time that I get to ask him questions and listen to his advice. And so, yeah, I'm grateful to share this journey and be with my family and make those impacts, leaving others valuable experiences.
Brad Dufrane, thank you so much for your time today on the Limitless Leadership Lounge. Just tell us how we can either get in touch with you, especially if we're looking from the financial advising side of things. We know a financial advisor. I know you do some work with them. And then also, how do we get the children's book that you've written?
The best way is probably LinkedIn, Brad Dufrane on LinkedIn. And my children's book is on Amazon, Little Billy and Beans on Amazon for anybody that's interested. Although if you email me, I'm glad to send a copy too. It's not a monetary thing for me with a book, so I'm willing to do that as well. And you mentioned advisor. I'm very fortunate to serve 100 plus financial advisors that do very well by people. So if you're in need of help in that arena, I can certainly refer you to a great professional. bdufrane at newyorklife.com would be my email.
Dufrane at newyorklife.com. Got that in the show notes as well as Brad's LinkedIn. Brad, it's been an honor to talk with you today. Thank you for connecting up on LinkedIn. I'm excited to stay in touch with you and for your great insights on our show today.
Thank you so much.